Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. We are doing another unboxing of a vintage model kit. This time we are looking at the Enterprise C. Now this box was sealed up until a moment ago. When I unsealed it, the plastic was just glaring a little bit. This model kit was put out in 1999. It was the last Star Trek model kit that was put out by AMT and Ertl. They did this. They also released it in clear the same year as a Pro kit with lighting. So this model kit, even though the ship was shown in Star Trek The Next Generation in 1990, this model kit came out 9 years later. So this came out after the Enterprise D. It came out after the Enterprise E. It came out after the Excelsior and the B. So this is really the last Star Trek model to complete that Enterprise lineage. After this, AMT Ertl would not make any more Star Trek model kits. So this should be a pretty well done model if it's the last one and kind of the final piece that AMT put out. So starting off, we have a good artistic shot of the Enterprise on the cover. We get some pics of a built model on the side. Always nice to see how the model actually builds up. Along the bottom, we have the different language flags, and of course on the bottom, just cardboard. So I've never built an Enterprise C. I've never even actually looked at one of the Enterprise C model kits. So I'm pretty excited to see what we have inside this. All right, let's look at the materials in the box. We get some advertisements for AMT's materials. The Blueprinter was kind of their magazine for model building. We have a little flyer for the Star Trek Communicator. Looks like a Star Trek magazine or the official Star Trek model kit from Aurora, Colorado. So this model kit was put out in 1999, and they're including a flyer for things coming out in the fall of 1997. These were the model kits they put out then, so kind of an older material that they put in here. But yeah, here's all the Star Trek model kits that AMT had out at that time. All right, we get an anniversary piece here for 50 years of AMT and Ertl models from 1998. And finally, we have our instructions. A lot more reasonably sized than the ones that we saw in the Enterprise B video, which really filled up kind of this entire little station here. So yeah, really simple pictures here. Kind of calling out all the parts. And nothing surprising about how these things go together on these kits. You know, clear parts for the grills, a top half, bottom half, dome for the front. Yeah, really simple build here. All right, we get some really good color explanations. Some very clear diagrams for what to paint everything. I like this a lot more than what we saw in the Enterprise B, where these instructions were on 2 separate sheets and huge. You don't really have too many parts, so instructions like this work just fine. You know what I'm not seeing here is decals. So let's see if decals are in any of these. Oh, okay. So we have our decal sheet was not put in any plastic, and it is actually stuck to the outside of this bag. All right, I took a moment and cut that bag apart, and we can see my decal sheet here. Whether it was sealed or not, it must have gotten wet at some point, and it has stuck itself to the back of this plastic bag. That's not a big deal. If I was going to build this, I'd be picking up some decals aftermarket for this anyways. But real shame that they didn't put like a piece of paper or package that better. They just put it loose in the box, and that's how it got stuck to that bag. All right, I'm going to take a moment here, and we're going to open up all these plastic bags and look at the model kit. All right, there's really nothing surprising in this model kit. Like all the kits done around that time, they really branded the base with where it came from, whether it was a movie. This was from Star Trek The Next Generation. And that's actually kind of a crazy logo there. That kind of looks like the oval insignia from Star Trek Generations put inside of a comm badge. The only thing I find kind of interesting here are these pieces. I'm not sure where on the model kit they want you to put those tiny little squares. They're completely detailless squares. Just little squares. So let's look for where those go. The saucer looks really good. I do like that the Enterprise C has a nice round saucer. These windows have always confused me. Those have to just be like skylights, right? That's just flat out on the top of the saucer. That's not sloped where somebody's looking out the side. All of those windows have to be skylights for the deck underneath it. But I'm glad they're molded in. That'll make, if you want to light this, pretty easy to tell where to put the windows so that you can carve them out and cut them out. You get ridges on the side of the saucer. You get windows along the saucer. That's nice that they were able to tool that in instead of having a smooth edge here. You get tons of grid lines for the Enterprise C, raised phasers, and those have some pretty good detail. There we go. So yeah, lots of detail on that phaser strip. Very cleanly molded. I don't see any defects in the molding at all. We get just two halves here for the body. Once again, a ton of windows. We get them all molded into the ship. I will say that the windows aren't put on in any interesting fashion. They're all just kind of put in a row, in a straight line, in a grid. But that's not about the model kit. That's more about how the designers made it. And as far as how this ship was made, this one really was a victim of budgets. Andrew Probert, who designed the Enterprise C, has some really gorgeous pictures of something that looks like an Excelsior crossed with the D, where you start to see the cool slopes of the D and the angles and the curves. And they couldn't afford to make it. So when it came time to make this ship, because it was only made for a single episode, they made something a little simpler with more straight circles, more just round designs, more flat surfaces. And so it was something kind of made in a simple fashion. I like these nacelles, and it looks like I've had a few parts come right off the sprue. This is really the quintessential Star Trek nacelle, isn't it? It's a nice shape. You'll be able to do a blue clear part all around the edge, a red dome up front, ton of room in there to light it. Yeah, plenty of room. And it looks like they did do the pylons in two parts. No room in between them. Actually, that does look like it is recessed a little bit. So yeah, okay. There is actually room without trenching. I don't know if you can see this. But there is room there without having to lay your own trench that would hold some magnet wire. Now, of course, you would trench it just to give yourself a little bit more room. But yeah, you can see right there, we do have this already kind of a little bit of room inside there for you to run just a little bit of wiring. Yeah, same thing on the bottom. You can see this is just raised just a little bit. So you've got a little bit of room underneath it. And you can see here, the top of that's raised as well. And those two parts meet each other. So there's room in there for magnet wire without having to dig your own trenches. That's fantastic. Looks like, yeah, you would get up to here. You'd have to trench through this raised part. And you'd have to trench through this raised part. But yeah, so no needing to dig crazy trenches in that. Now already, comparing this to the Enterprise B that I just looked at, I'd be so much more excited to build this one, simply because it's a little closer to the point where you could light it. You'd have to open up a lot of windows. But you've got a ton of room in this saucer. You've got a ton of room in it to light up all the windows, even if they are skylights. A huge amount of room in the nacelle. This would also be a wonderful kit to just kit bash into things. I mean, with this classic nacelle shape, this real classic saucer, I'm surprised you don't see more people building these into like a Reliant type shape. One thing I'm really impressed with right here is this is exceptionally clear on the plastic. If you can look through that, yeah, that's like looking through a window. Super clear. So the quality of this model and the quality of the plastic is fantastic. So almost no additional parts to put on this model as far as details. Everything's molded on to the main parts. We get one small little part here, which is going to be the impulse engine on the back of the neck. We get a clear grid for that right here. But nothing like doing the bridge module in different parts. Looks like these are little phaser strips that go on the outside of the pylon. And we get, oh, this is an interesting part here. Okay, let's take a look at this for a sec. So I had always heard that this part was included in the model kit. This is my first chance to see it. So this is an extra part, and it actually really looks like this part off of the Excelsior, leading a lot of people to think that maybe the people making this used part of the Excelsior when they were making the Yamaguchi. And the Yamaguchi is a different ship on Star Trek that the Enterprise C model was used to portray. Okay, so the story about this piece is the Enterprise C studio model was used a couple times on Deep Space Nine to represent the Yamaguchi. And they added a part underneath the engineering hull to kind of differentiate it. So this part that we're looking at here gets added on if you are turning this into the Yamaguchi. And I believe it's only included in this kit because they were making this kit and that clear Pro kit of the Yamaguchi at the same time. So you get this extra little part, and kind of the theory is the people, when they were making the Enterprise C into the Yamaguchi, they used a part that had been made for one of the Excelsiors. And this part really does look like that part off the Excelsior. So if you're making the Enterprise C, you've got a spare part here you can use for kit bashing, or you can use it to make your ship into the Yamaguchi. And so I still have no idea where these tiny parts go. These tiny little squares. Looks like I have kind of a big rectangular one, and then about a dozen little squares. They're starting to fall off their sprue a little bit. And I don't see those called for anywhere on the instructions. So if anybody knows where those tiny little squares belong, put it down in the comments. Put down in the comments where in the world those go. My guess is they must be some part of the lighting kit that was used on the Yamaguchi. Since it looks like we've got a big clue here that this kit was molded exactly the same way the Yamaguchi or the C. I'm guessing there's probably some spare part just like this for the Yamaguchi. Maybe the Yamaguchi, here's my guess. And tell me if I'm right in the comments. Maybe the Yamaguchi has more lifeboats, so you glue those on to make additional lifeboats throughout the ship. All right, so that is the look at kind of the vintage NCC 1701C, the Star Trek Enterprise that took place right before the Next Generation. All right, so this week we've looked at two vintage kits. We've looked at the Enterprise B and the Enterprise C. And if you guys have any interest in seeing these built on the channel, let us know down below. They'd be kind of different builds. We'd have to look for aftermarket decals to kind of get these old kits looking the way they should. But if you'd like to see it, put that down in the comments and we'll see what we can do. Once again, thank you guys all for following our builds and watching the videos on this channel. We should have pretty soon here some looks at some of the newer models coming out by round 2. So thank you guys very much. Make sure to check out our official forum, allscaletrek.com, for all sorts of Star Trek model kits, builds and reviews and everything. Thank you guys so much.